Good evening, South Africa, and welcome to Unfiltered. I'm Ridi Tlhabi. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. To nationalize or not to nationalize the South African Reserve Bank, that is the question for tonight. I would not blame you if you are confused about the ruling ANC's position on the central bank. Its national conference in 2017 resolved to nationalize it. The Secretary General of the party reaffirmed that mandate, saying the matter is a done deal and that nobody had a choice. It is a conference decision. But in the same week, and this is important, President Cyril Ramaphosa directly contradicted Ace Magashule, the Secretary General, saying that manifesto issues would form part of a debate and that the paragraph in the manifesto was a wish and an aspiration. He added that the Reserve Bank is independent and there was no intention to tamper with its independence. In its manifesto, the ANC says the central bank must pursue a flexible monetary policy which takes into account other objectives such as employment creation and economic growth. I pause here. I pause deliberately because that seems to already be in the mandate of the Reserve Bank. And the Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni, joyfully confirmed on social media that this flexible monetary policy is already being implemented. So if this is the case, why is this an election promise, aspiration, wish, or whatever the president calls it? Moving on, there are many who do believe that the state must own the bank on behalf of the people, saying private ownership gives unknown people too much power. But is this true? Let's deal with the elephant in the room, state capture. Opponents of nationalization believe that this is yet another attempt at state capture, taking complete political control of the bank so that money can flow freely. Tonight on Unfiltered, we bring you the South African Reserve Bank 101. We welcome the Reserve Bank Governor, Mr. Lesetja Kganyago. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Good evening.
And before we even carry on, I think we do have a technical problem because there are a lot of sounds and music in my ear and sounds on the floor. So we hope that you're not hearing that at home and that what you'll hear is a clean and succinct conversation with the Reserve Bank Governor because it is very, very important. Governor, I beg your indulgence. I would like to do Reserve Bank 101. And some of these questions may just be pedestrian and ordinary to you. But I think in the current political climate, they are very, very important. So yes and no with a short elaboration statement, and then we'll debate later. My first question to you. The primary mandate of the Reserve Bank is to protect the value of the currency in the interest of balanced and sustainable economic growth. Maybe I'm not understanding this. It sounds as if the economic growth mandate is already there in that mandate. Yes or no?
Yes, it is in the mandate. The authors of the Constitution were very clear that for you to have balanced and sustainable growth in South Africa, you need price stability.
Okay. The second thing that I want to dispel, confirm, or challenge is that because the Reserve Bank is in private hands, as it were, it means that you have private individuals determining monetary policy. Is this factual?
The Reserve Bank is not in private hands. It does have private shareholders. Those private shareholders are akin to preference shareholders. They do not control the bank, and they have got no say on monetary policy. Monetary policy is the preserve of the governor and the three deputies.
In some countries, you have the governor of the Reserve Bank sitting in cabinet or advising the Minister of Finance. The perception in the current debate is that the Reserve Bank is so independent that government doesn't have a say, that there are no structures in place for interaction with the government. What is the status quo?
The Constitution says the Reserve Bank must pursue its mandate independently and without fear, favor, or prejudice. But there must be regular consultation between the Reserve Bank and the national cabinet, the cabinet member responsible for national financial affairs, basically the Minister of Finance. To give effect to that, Minister Mboweni, the then governor, and Trevor Manuel engaged the two institutions and set structures between the two to coordinate fiscal and monetary policy. We have got joint committees between the bank and the National Treasury to do coordination between fiscal and monetary policy.
All right. Again, another yes or no with some detail on your part. The debate out there is that shareholders are cashing in on what is a central bank which should belong to people. They're making profits. They are getting richer and richer. My understanding is that there's a limit on how many shares an individual or entity can own in the Reserve Bank, and that furthermore, there's also a cap on profits, with 90% of the profits actually going to the government. What is reality?
You're correct. We have got 2 million shares in issue. No individual, together with their family or their associates, could own more than 10,000 shares. The dividend that any shareholder could get is kept at 10 cents per share. With 2 million shares in issue, 10 cents per share means the maximum dividend that the South African Reserve Bank pays to the shareholders is 200,000 rands a year. The Reserve Bank last year made profit of some 1.5 billion rands. The shareholders get 200,000. And the way in which the law is written is that the Reserve Bank must provide for its reserves, and after it has provided for its reserves, 90% of the profits that are remaining have to be paid to the bank, have to be paid to the National Treasury.
So what is this current debate all about? And here, I do want us to have a more detailed discussion. Are we debating ownership or mandate of the Reserve Bank? And I'll tell you where I'm going here. Austria, for example, nationalized its central bank in 2010, but the mandate has not changed, really. Britain nationalized its Reserve Bank in 1946, and then later on it became a full public institution, but there is independence and so on. And there are so many examples that we could give. So nationalization doesn't necessarily mean a compromise of independence, but what is our debate about? Is it ownership or mandate?
I would like to know what exactly the debate is about. The Bundesbank is a wholly owned bank by the government of Germany. It is fiercely independent. There are only about 7 central banks in the world, including ours, that still have private shareholding. And if you have time, I will explain to you how private shareholding in the South African Reserve Bank came about. What we were very clear, really, if we were having this discussion 2 years ago and they talked about nationalizing the Reserve Bank, says it will have no impact on the mandate. That was the view that we held, and we said that if it will interfere with the mandate, we will stand up and fight that thing. But what we have recently seen is that people started talking about the mandate. So they started to put the two together. And that is actually what should actually get South Africans worried when then this issue of nationalization and the mandate get to be put together. Be that as it may, I actually think that if they interfere with the mandate, they would be acting unconstitutionally.
So basically, whether we nationalize it or not is immaterial to the functioning and the independence of the Reserve Bank, or at least that's what should happen, as happened in other countries. I've heard some other economists like Mike Schussler and another professor at Wits University, I think it's Professor Rousseau, who's also coincidentally a shareholder, saying that it's much ado about nothing really. It's purely symbolic. We'll talk about the symbolism much later, but they're saying that nationalizing need not necessarily change the mandate. Is your concern that the conversation right now is about the mandate?
Our concern is that the conversation is about the mandate. Really, let me put it this way. We have put all the facts in public. We have put all the facts with government, with the president, with his cabinet. We have put all the facts on what this thing would entail. And we said that you can start the process. We will engage with that process. All that we are interested in is to protect the mandate of the bank and to protect the independence of the bank, bearing in mind that the Constitution didn't just provide for the independence of the bank. The Constitution had to provide for the independence of the bank because the constitutional principles on which the Constitution is based included an independent central bank.
I got you loud and clear. Okay, let's just pause and take a break a little bit, and then when we come back, we'll come and talk about the current political environment, the pros and cons of nationalization, the symbolism, which if you and I had spoken yesterday, I would have just dismissed. But 24 hours later, there are people who are arguing for the public to have a bigger say. You've also said and encouraged people to go and buy shares at the Reserve Bank so that we achieve diversity. And I'm thinking in our economy, with the face of poverty in South Africa being black and the extent of our inequality, it's kind of obvious which kind of people would be rushing through to go and buy shares at the Reserve Bank. We'll talk about that when we come back. You at home can continue to have your say. We are on Twitter, we are on Facebook. What do you think about all of this? And please, I posted on Twitter to nationalize or not to nationalize the Reserve Bank. And some of you went, let's nationalize. But you don't say why. The point of debate is for you to support your fact and counter other people's arguments with facts. I look forward to your contribution.
Fashion, travel, music, food, and food. Did I mention food?
We at Trends Travel love bringing you cuisines from around the world.
Forbes US have declared Gaborone the coolest city destination to visit in the world for 2018-2019.
You know, as designers, we're always setting trends and also doing like high fashion. So it was quite nice to come and see the ready-to-wears every day.
We're essentially talking about a condition where your body has a difficulty utilizing glucose effectively, so it starts building up in the bloodstream.
It's important to understand that one cannot cure diabetes, but you can manage it.
The best advice I can give is understand and know your diabetes.
About 70 to 80% of women will suffer uterine fibroids by the time they reach the age of 50.
There are a lot of women walking around who don't even know that they've got fibroids.
Join us on Health Talk, Saturdays at 9 a.m.
One thing about my grandmother, she was illiterate, but she never allowed me, even until now, I'm not a TV person. Read, read, read.
Welcome back, everyone. You are watching Unfiltered on SABC3 tonight with me, Ridi Tlhabi. I'm in conversation with the Reserve Bank Governor, Lesetja Kganyago. Now, in the first segment, I thought it was very important to just do a Reserve Bank 101. And I hope that we've managed, dear viewer, to separate fact from fiction. Now let's get on to the current debate. You can participate on Facebook and Twitter using hashtag SABC News Unfiltered. We talked about banks that are in the hands of independent or private shareholders. I think Greece, Switzerland, Italy, us in South Africa, and Turkey as well is there. Now, something stood out for me in the ANC resolution at Nasrec, point 29 on the Reserve Bank. This is what they say. They say it is a historical anomaly that you've got private shareholders. And I thought, but since 1921, since it was the Reserve Bank was founded in 1921, has it not been privately owned? But also, sir, if you can indulge me, a lot of countries at that time in 1921, there were private shareholders. But the economic climate after the Great Depression, the World War, galvanized everybody into nationalizing their Reserve Bank. So what I'm saying is that even those that are nationalized were not always nationalized. So the term historical anomaly, how do you understand all of that? Just tell us about our transition.
The first generation of central banks that were created, including the Federal Reserve in the US, had private shareholding. Right. And actually the Fed still has. But there is one thing that is common. The profits go to the government. What was the South African situation? The South African situation was that before the creation of the South African Reserve Bank, every individual commercial bank issued its own banknotes. And then South Africa experienced a banking crisis in 1918, and a decision was taken to say that we can't leave this thing, a currency, to be issued by the commercial banks. Let us create a central bank. The government didn't have the money to capitalize the Reserve Bank. And so it had to issue shareholding and ask South Africans to participate, one. Right. Two, to compensate the banks, because the banks used to issue their own banknotes, the banks were told, in lieu of you issuing banknotes, you would be given shareholding in the central bank. And that then meant that the banks give up their ability to print money, and that was now in the hands of the Reserve Bank. But government also said to the banks, you were the source of the 1918 banking crisis, so we are going to cap how much shares you actually own. And so no individual, no institution was allowed to own more than 10,000 shares. It actually had to take a number of years before the Reserve Bank was fully capitalized. Now, they say that it's a historical anomaly that you have got a central bank with private shareholding. I say that it is an anomaly that a central bank which has got private shareholding, 90% of the profits go to the government. Yeah. But that is because people are just talking about anomalies here. The truth of the matter is that that is international practice, that even the central banks that have got private shareholders participating in the capital of the bank, the profits go to the taxpayers.
Okay, let's talk about the two schools of thought. There are some economists who believe that that extra layer of accountability and governance, having private shareholders, is good for the country. On the other hand, I'm quoting economics professor Chris Maleka, who said that it is jarring to have private shareholders determining the value of our rand, the value of our labor, the value of our assets, and so on. And he also added that had the central bank been nationalized, it would have been better able to pick up the VBS matter and the price collusion that has been reported by the Competition Commission. Do you agree? I suspect not.
That is a handful. I haven't heard what that professor actually had said. But if he was here saying that to me, I would have told him, Professor, the very first thing you do before you engage in an argument, you go and read the law. Go and read the South African Reserve Bank Act and go and read the Constitution. And in terms of the Reserve Bank Act, the private shareholders have got no say in the determining of monetary policy and in the determining of the price of money in this country. It is as simple as
Would they have been more alert, though? In other words, they were not alert on the VBS matter or on the collusion by the banks?
Let's get the things clear. The collusion by the
price
banks,
fixing, was
or
it price
fixing by anybody, it was in the foreign exchange market, by anybody, is the domain of the competition authorities. Our job is to prudentially regulate the banks. In other words, our job is to make sure that the deposits that you have with the banking system are safe. And we do that by ensuring that banks keep adequate capital, that banks keep adequate liquidity, that when you want your money, you would be able to access the money. Whether a central bank is nationalized or not, whether a central bank is employing a battalion of supervisors or a small group of supervisors, we must understand the central bank does not run the commercial banks. The commercial bank are owned by shareholders. We must keep them in check. They have got their own board of directors who are running the bank, and the board of directors have to hold the executives of the banks to account. Our job is to protect the depositors, and people keep on saying this thing. I says, no. You're missing the point. Our job as regulators is not to prevent the banks from failing. Our task as regulators is to protect the depositors. And if a bank fails, we will make sure that the bank fails without compromising the depositors. That is where we come in.
All right, when we come back in our next segment, we'll talk about the way forward. I mean, you said something very interesting, that before people comment about the bank, it's important that they understand the law. And I see the Minister of Finance has also been quite busy on social media, educating, challenging, or clap backing some of his comrades. Stay with us.
Next, wrong form, blue one. green form, orange form, baby blue form.
Yo, all this serious deserves a glass of not so serious. Come fill yours with Tops at Spa.
The Drakensberg is the name given to the eastern portion of Great Escarpments, which encloses the central Southern Africa plateau. The name means Drakensberge in Afrikaans and is called Ukahlamba in isiZulu, which means barrier of spears. The Drakensberg escarpment stretches for over 1,000 kilometers from Eastern Cape, then forms the border between Lesotho and the Eastern Cape, and the border between Lesotho and KwaZulu-Natal. It then forms the border between KwaZulu-Natal and the Free State, and next as the border between KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga. It winds north through Mpumalanga, where it includes features such as Blade River Canyon, Three Rondavels, and God's Window. The Drakensberg is the highest mountain range in the country, reaching 3,482 meters above sea level.
Welcome back. Let's just get on with it. There's so much to unpack as we discuss the mandate of the Reserve Bank to nationalize or not to nationalize. Is there clarity? I have a piece of paper with me which I didn't have earlier on, but I absolutely have to bring you in here because the Reserve Bank governor spoke about people reading and familiarizing themselves with the law. There's been an exchange between the finance minister and the mayor of Ekurhuleni. I'm just going to read this very quickly. Zwandile Masina has posted a whole lot of things, but one of them is, at the heart of monetary policy is the setting of the level of interest to be charged by the Reserve Bank when it lends money to the commercial banks, the repo rate. Tito Mboweni, the finance minister, former Reserve Bank governor, former Labour minister, hits back. Okay, here is the simplified Mboweni idiom. Open your brain first before opening your mouth. This means, for example, that don't say things about the South African Reserve Bank before you know what the bank does. Okay? Helpful? See you at the NEC Lekgotla. Governor, it's getting a bit crass, isn't it? Is any of this rhetoric harming the bank, or is it business as usual as far as you're concerned?
I think that we have entered a season in South Africa where political leaders comment on all sorts of things. We stay away from the politics. We are a creature of the Constitution, and with a mandate in terms of the Constitution, in the words of Minister Mboweni, the Reserve Bank is doing a good job. Can you please stop distracting them?
But the ANC in its manifesto just said this flexible monetary policy, and in NASDAQ they said something else, and then they say that the flexible monetary policy is already happening. So if you're doing a good job and everything is great and this flexibility is there, what are we talking about? Why are we here?
Well, I guess you can ask the ones who are talking what they are talking about, but in essence, every statement of the Monetary Policy Committee from the days of Tito Mboweni kept on talking about the South African Reserve Bank pursues a policy of flexible inflation targeting. That is what we have been doing since inflation targeting was introduced in 2000.
Okay, but we've spoken then about nationalization, that it actually wouldn't necessarily make a difference. It wouldn't harm the independence. I gave the Austria example. But, you know, forgive me, indulge me here. We have experimented with state capture in South Africa. Much of that is being revealed at the Zondo Commission. We've got SAA, we've got Eskom, we've got Transnet, and so on. I don't trust that even if nationalization has no impact on mandate and independence, that in the South African case study, given the context and milieu of state capture, that basically I don't trust the state.
Okay. Two things. One is that South Africans need to ask the question. If you are going to nationalize the Reserve Bank, you must pay. So there's going to be
pay the shareholders out.
There must going to be an argument of how much value you pay. And there is a big debate amongst the shareholders on what that would pay. Depending on the assumptions used, the figure could vary from anything from 20 million rand to 150 billion rand.
That the taxpayers
must pay. Whatever the figure is, South Africans have to ask this question. If South Africa had 100 billion rand, would you spend 100 billion rand buying out the shareholders, or would you take 100 billion rand and build hospitals or build schools or build roads? It's a very simple trade-off.
Okay, others are saying that people want to get their hands on the Reserve Bank because it's the last entity.
I just wanted to say that let's not forget there was an attempt to capture the South African Reserve Bank.
Okay.
There was an attempt to capture the South African Reserve Bank.
For what purpose, though?
There was a time in this country a few years ago, not very long, where there was a proposal by some minister that banking licensing must be removed from the Reserve Bank and be placed with the political structures. That was a very overt attempt to capture the South African Reserve Bank. There was an attempt.
Was that recent?
It was. When I'm saying recent, I mean like a year.
Former Minister of Finance, Minister Gigaba.
No, it was not the finance minister. It was a minister who had nothing to do with bank regulation for that matter.
Okay, so it wasn't a minister in charge overseeing.
Yes.
Okay.
And there was an attempt to force the Reserve Bank to say that the Reserve Bank must tell banks not to close the bank accounts
of certain ministers. We remember that.
Of certain individuals. And it said, sorry, but when the banks do this thing, they are implementing your law. They are implementing the law of this government. The law of this government says that you must know your customers and you must know what is happening. And if there are suspicious transactions, they must be reported. And if the account is risky, you must walk away from it.
Are you worried about the matter having now transcended the rhetoric and it's now in Parliament? We know that the EFF leader tabled the bill to change the constitution. Does that worry you?
With the bill in Parliament, we will engage with it. We will make our views hold. What is giving us comfort is the categoric statement of the President and the Minister of Finance, which said the independence and the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank are sacrosanct. If that is what they are saying, that was the best support that we could have asked for.
Okay, I wouldn't want you to comment on this one, but, you know, the EFF's position on this is curious because they've been quite vocal in exposing corruption in Parliament and not trusting the government and the state to take care of our resources, but you now want to put the Reserve Bank in their hands. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are at the forefront of Africa's tech discussion.
We're already planning for the 5G spectrum to be licensed by 2020.
In Mauritius, for fiber migration, we had a strategy. On network, we have gadgets, robots, and more.
We focus on investing in entrepreneurs and technology in emerging markets.
There's technology and social media news on Network with me, Spumelele Zondi, every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. and every Sunday at 5:30 p.m.
Being a part of the SABC Team News for me means keeping honesty is a priority within our society. Also, providing our audience with a sense of familiarity in an independent and impartial way. My name is Chibiwa Mbezi and I am SABC News.
Part of the SABC News team means
tell an independent and impartial African story.
I'm proud to be part of the SABC News team,
bringing business news to the man on the street and the executive in the boardroom.
We expose challenges faced by communities on a daily basis.
It is to take you behind the headlines, to show you the faces and take you to the places that make this country beautiful.
And that's the power of the SABC, to go beyond the story.
I am SABC News.
I am SABC News.
I am SABC News.
And I am SABC News.